All right, so for this game, we have what is effectively just a sequencing game. So we have 7 positions to run across the top, so we'll line that up accordingly. But we also have to keep track of different types of things. So we have essentially these 3 articles, G, H, and J, all of which are going to be finance. And then we've got Q, R, and S, all of which will be nutrition. And then also there's also Y, and Y is going to be wildlife. Otherwise, it's 1-to-1, right? So everybody here goes exactly once across the 7, so nothing weird in that regard. Let's take a look at the rules. So the first rule says consecutive articles cannot be the same type. So that's kind of a big rule. So I guess we can just say something like 2 things cannot be the same type consecutively. But the implications, anytime you have these kinds of rules that say that certain things can't be next to each other, you always want to kind of think that through kind of thoroughly, because it often creates this very restrictive every other one kind of situation. It also spreads things out quite a bit. So for example, let's take G, H, and J, right? If we have 3 elements, no 2 of which can touch, what is the minimum number of spaces that you have to spread them out across? And it would be at least 5, right? Because the first one would start at 1, the next one would go to 3, and the next one would go to 5. You would have to kind of spread them out across at least 5 spaces, and that's a significant amount of room that you're taking up. Now, to be fair, in this game we have 7 spaces, so it's not, as limiting, but still, the fact that we would have to take up that much room is notable. Moreover, I guess, since it's not just the finance articles, it's nutritionists too, right? Both sets of articles, they would kind of have to almost go every other one. And I'd say almost because this asshole right here, it kind of screws things up, right? So the Y can kind of shuffle in between these guys. But hypothetically, if you get rid of the Y, if Y gets locked or if you roughly know where it goes, it would restrict everybody else pretty heavily, because then it's going to go every other one between the finance and nutrition. And that's definitely something that you kind of want to be conscious of. Anyways, let's keep going. Second rule says that S can be earlier than Q only if Q is third. So I guess in order for S to go before Q, you would have to have Q in 3. So I guess we can say something like, if S is before Q, then Q would have to be into the 3rd position. And actually that's kind of significant too, because both of these guys are nutrition. So if S is before Q, it locks Q into here, but then S would have to go into 1 because they can't be consecutive. Or alternatively, I suppose you could have Q before S, and that's a bit more flexible. Anyways, next, we are told that S has to go before Y, so we can say S before Y, and Y is, of course, our wildlife. Now, so I suppose if you trigger this, if you have S before Q, then Y would kind of do whatever. We would have flexibility there. But if you don't have S before Q, then you would have a Q before S, and then the S would go before the Y. So really, there's either we're basically going to have a Q, S, Y setup, or alternatively, you would have to trigger this, but then it forces essentially S1, Q3. So we can kind of almost say that, yeah, we're basically either going to have this range, or alternatively, we're going to have S1 space Q3, and then the rest are going to be a bit more flexible. All right, cool. Let's keep going. Last rule, J is before G and G is before R. So we get something like J before G before R. So J and G are both going to be finance articles. R is going to be a nutrition article. And obviously, again, they're going to have to take up an extra space in between them. So that's worth noting. But yeah, I suppose from here, we're a little bit flexible. And for the record, in this scenario, right, the Y could go in between the S and the Q, or anywhere later we have movement. All right, yeah, you know what? Let's see what we can do with what we have. The questions themselves. Number 17 is our standard exclusion question. So let's see what we can do. So the first rule was that consecutives can't be the same topic. You know what, that's a bit of a pain to test. So let's come back to this one towards the end. The second rule told us that S is earlier than Q only if Q is third. So answer choice A right away violates that, because we have S before Q, but Q isn't third. And then the rest of these are okay. B, C, D have Q before S, so it doesn't apply. And E has Q in third, so we're good. Next, we are told that S has to go before Y. So going through the answer choices, B, C, and D, there it is. D is violating that. We have Y before S, and E is still good. Next, we have to have J, G, R in that relative order. So between B, C, and E, B has J, G, R, we're good. C has J, G, R, we're good. And E has G before J. That's not going to work. So now we're just down to B and C. So now we're testing for we cannot have consecutive articles be the same type. So G, H, and J are all finance. Let's see if that's violated. And there it is. Answer choice B has G and H consecutively, so we can get rid of that. And answer choice C becomes the best answer to question number 17. Just to kind of go over why I tested that first rule last. Essentially, if you can tell that a rule is a bit of a pain to test, like you have to go into a lot of details and it takes more time, the idea is that by testing easier rules first, by the time that you get to that difficult one, there's just fewer answer choices to bother with, so there's that much less work to do. Anyways, as usual, let's plug that into the board. So answer choice C gives us QJS, followed by HYGR. And I guess we can kind of put the types. Y is a wildlife, G, H, and J are all finance, and the other guys are nutrition. So from there, the first local question that we have is number 18. Let's see what we can do. So if Y is fourth, what does that tell us? Well, I guess that probably influences this. So if Y is fourth, so okay, yeah, either we said one of these two is going to have to hit, right? But you'll notice that if it's this, then Q and S are just going to go into 1 and 3 since they can't be consecutive and they would have to go before the Y. But if it's this, it's just the other way around. You're going to have S1, Q3. So both of those could work, but either way you go, you're going to have S and Q taking up 1 and 3 in some capacity. Both of these guys are nutrition. And that means that in between them, since we've already burned the Y, this is going to have to be a finance article. And since we have 2 finance articles remaining, they're going to go between 5, 6, 7. So we're going to have 5 and 7 are going to be finance split by the other nutrition. Oh, and we also know J, G, R, right? So J and G, they can't go into 7. So you're going to have basically J in 2, G in 5, R in 6, and H in 7. Perfect. Let's go. The question asks, what must be true? J2, and there it is. J does have to go second. The best answer to number 18 is A. Next, number 19, if G is fourth. Well, I suppose let's see what we can do. If we have G in the fourth position, G being a finance article, so I guess we know that J is going to go prior, so it's going to go somewhere in these 3, and R is going to go somewhere in those 3. In fact, let's keep track of that. We can say J is going to be somewhere here, R is going to be somewhere there. Now, so okay, wait a minute. We know that, let's talk about the Y, because the Y is that one that once we can take care of Y, everything else kind of turns into this every other one kind of game. So there's no way to put the Y on this side, is there? Because if you put a Y somewhere here, you'll have to have the Q and the S, first of all, next to each other. And on top of that, there would be no room for the J. So the Y is going to be somewhere on this side. And that's really important because if we have the Y somewhere on this side, then these 3, we know the types because they can't be the same type next to each other. So 3 is going to have to be nutrition, 2 is going to have to be finance, and 1 is going to have to be nutrition. So J, we actually know is going to be locked in 2 because it's a finance article. Now, beyond that, oh, well, wait a minute, R has to be on this end. So neither of these is an R, so they're just going to have to be Q and S. And again, it could go either way. So we could do Q before S before Y, or we can just do S1, Q3. Both of those are functional. And then the rest of these, I guess we just have an H shuffling. Well, I guess H can't go into 5 since it's a finance article, but this could still be an R or a Y, so we have a little bit of flexibility. Let's see what we can do. The question asks, what could be true? H is 5, and we just said that cannot happen. B, J is 1. Nope, that's the wrong space. Q is 2. Nope, that's not going to happen. S is 5. And no, because S has to go either in 1 or in 3. Answer choice E, Y is 6. And maybe, because we could put a Y here, the R can go there, and the H would go into 7. So, best answer to question number 19 is E. Next, number 20 is global. We'll come back to this one. Let's take a look at 21. So if J goes third, well, I suppose, so if J is third, first of all, we definitely don't have Q3, so it's going to have to be QSY. And I guess that means that the Y, the earliest that the Y, it couldn't even go fourth because Q and S can't go next to each other. So the earliest Y could go is a number 5. So everything here, remember, once you take into account the Y, everything else has to be every other one. So we can't have F's next to J. And since Y is later, these are going to have to be nutrition. And this is going to have to be an F, again, because it can't be a nutrition. So that's good. In fact, wait a minute. This guy right here, this can't be a G because G has to go after the J. So it's going to be an H for sure. And these guys can't be an R because R has to go after the G, and there's no opportunity for that yet. So these will have to be Q. Well, actually, more specifically, we know since we don't have this, it's going to have to be Q before S. So Q is going to be in 2, and S is going to be in 4. And then the rest of these guys, we have to have still G before R, and a Y is just going to shuffle everybody back and forth. Okay, let's see what we can do. The question asks, which of the following could be true? Answer choice A, G4 and no, that's currently S, H6, and maybe if we put an 8, oh no, H is already in 1, that's not going to work. Answer choice C, Q1, nope, that's already in 2. Can we do S2? Nope, that's already a Q. And can we do Y5? And maybe, because we could put a Y over here, that would follow the Y before, after S, after Q. And then G and R would go into 6 and 7. So the best answer to question number 21 is E. Next, number 22. Actually, the rest of these are all global, so let's go back to the global questions. Number 20. So number 20 says, which of the following could be true? Answer choice A, could we have G in second? Now, we haven't seen that yet, but oh no, that's definitely not going to work, because if G goes second, then J is going to have to go right before it, and they can't. They're the same type. So A is out. B, could we have H in second? Now this we haven't seen yet, but H is pretty flexible. So why not? Let's hold on to answer choice B. Answer choice C, could we have S in second? And no, because based on this, either S is going to go first, which if it's second, then that's not happening. But if it's not, then if S is second, then Q is going to have to go before, but then they're both nutritions and they're consecutive, so that's not going to work. Can we do R in third? And no, similar issue as G. If we put R over here, we'll have to have G and J right before, but then J and G will be next to each other, which they can't be. Answer choice E, could we have Y in third? And no, similar kind of issue. If you put Y into 3, then Q is not. But if this is not happening, then this has to happen. So Y will have to go into 3, and then S and Q will go before, and Q and S can't be consecutive. So best answer to question number 20 is B. Next, number 22. In the order in which the articles are edited, S could be where except. So basically where S cannot go. Now, if we look at the history, where have we seen an S? We've seen an S in 3, we've seen it in 1, and we've seen it in 4. So we can cross off 1, 3, and 4. That would, oh, that's convenient. A, B, and C are all out. So now we're down to B, D, and E, 5 and 6. Now, so based on this rule, it would be a lot easier to test S in 6, because if you put S into 6, then Y gets forced into 7. So we can kind of run that a lot more quickly. So if we do this, let's try it out. If we do S here, can we do Y over there? And since Y is over here, the types are resolved for the rest. This is going to have to be F, N, F, N, F. And then from there, I guess JGR is going to have to go. The only way it would work is 1, 3, 4. So that takes care of that. And I think we're okay. We have to have Q before S, so Q can go into number 2, and then whoever's left, H is going to go in 5. This seems to work. So this would prove that S could have gone 6th, and that would get rid of answer choice E, leaving you with answer choice D as the best answer here. Now, if you're tight for time, you should jump ahead to question number 23. But if you have a few moments to go back to question 22, just to make sure, to be fair, we haven't proven that answer choice D is the right answer choice. We just proved that everything else would have been fine. But let's see, why couldn't S go into 5? Well, if we put S into 5, I suppose we know that Y would have to go somewhere in 6 or 7. But since Y is somewhere over here, we know that these guys are resolved, right? It would have to be, the types would have to be F, N, F, N. Now from there, I suppose we know R. There's no way to put an R into either of these two positions. So these would have to be, oh, yeah, there it is. That breaks, doesn't it? Yeah, there's nowhere to put R. These are the only two other nutrition articles, but since R would have had to go after G, this would have broken. So this wouldn't have worked. And again, that would have proven why S could not go 5th and why answer choice D is correct for question 22. Lastly, 23. The order of the articles is fully determined if which of the following is true. So what would lock down the game? Let's try this out. Answer choice A, H goes into 4. Now, if H went 4th, we had one scenario where that happened over here. And to be fair, in that scenario, everything was locked in place. But would H have done that on their own? Would H have locked everything? Like if we put an H here, what does that really trigger all that much? Actually, in fact, wait a minute. The thing with Q and S is that they've always been able to kind of flip when they were in 1 and 3, right? If we put an S over here and a Q over here, so if we did the S1, Q3, nothing would have broken. So even that scenario seems like it could have gone either way with 1 and 3. So that probably would not have been enough to lock everything down. Now, in this situation, because I don't see, even if I didn't notice the Q and S in 1 or 3, because I didn't really see what the angle is and what that might have been doing for me, I probably would not have tested that answer choice out right away. So even if I didn't recognize the 1 and 3 kind of possibility, this is still a kind of answer choice that you should probably leave open at best. If you don't see what you can latch onto, then you probably want to leave that until later. Let's keep going. Answer choice B, H goes into 6. Now, if H was in 6, would that have locked the game? Now, we haven't seen H in 6 historically, but I suppose the question becomes, what does that really do for us? If H was in 6, I'm not really sure of the implications. In fact, in this scenario, I could have put H in 6, couldn't I? Because if H was here, I could have done R here and Y there, and that would have been okay, but Q and S were still variable. So yeah, that certainly seems like H6 would not be enough. Answer choice C, R goes 4th. Now, again, we've only seen one scenario where R is in 4th. Although, wait a minute. If we put R into 4th, that's kind of significant because it would force G3 and J1, right? Because these guys would have to go prior. You know what? Let's test this one out. This one seems like it has some teeth to it. So if you put an R over here, we would have to do J, G in these positions. And from there, we know that we don't have this, so we have to have Q, S, Y, but that means Y is going to be way later, so we're going to have a nutrition over here, and this will have to be an F because there's no way to fit a Y here. In fact, yeah, the only way to make this work now is for Q, S, Y to go into 2, 6, since we can't have S next to R, and Y in 7. This takes care of it. And then whoever's left over, H, would have to go into 5. And that would have been enough to prove the answer. Best answer to question 23 is C. For the record, let's take a look at the other two. Answer choice D. R is 7th. Would that be enough? And no, in fact, it seems like that's the kind of thing we could have done over here, because we could have put an R here and then H over here and Y over there. We said it was pretty flexible, but Q and S are still variable, so that would not have been enough to prove where everything goes. Answer choice E, Y goes into 5. And again, this scenario, that could have worked. If you put a Y over here, then you could have had the S or Q go either way, and then the other guys, R and H, would have just shuffled between 6 and 7, so that would not have been enough to completely lock everything down. Once again, the best answer to question 23 is C.